From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and concerned citizens making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos, Assistant Professor in Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. I love the fall. I love the smell of fall. I love the look of fall. And I love that in the fall we typically all get together. So at things like Beekeepers Meeting or at the NAPSI Conference in Washington, there's an opportunity to share our stories from the past year. Of course, there's a pandemic going on, but lo and behold, these conference organizers are really determined, and there's lots of wonderful virtual conferences that are available to anybody. But before you can go to a conference, real or virtual, you have to get your honeybee colonies ready for winter. So I thought it was a great opportunity to connect with one of my favorite people on the planet, Dr. Shelley Hoover. Now, Dr. Hoover used to be with Alberta Agriculture, and she was an apiculture researcher with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry, but she's since moved. She's a new faculty member at the University of Lethbridge. And in this episode, I'm actually in the bee yard with Dr. Hoover. She's getting her colonies ready for winter, and so she's going to lay it all out for you, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what she's going to be talking about at the Oregon State Beekeepers Association meeting. Yes, Shelley's going to be at OSBA this year. Also, Ian Stepler, a beekeeper from Manitoba, and myself. That makes 3 Canadians at the OSBA conference this year. I'm going to be talking about honeybee native bee competition. Also, Dr. Ramesh Sagili, Elena El Nino. It's going to be a really great conference, only $60, and it's from October 24th to November 14th. Why so long? Because it's on 2 different weekends and also a couple weeknights, so it's spread out, so you don't have to sit in front of a Zoom meeting for hours on end. You just get these great, intense, really well-organized snippets of wonderful beekeeping information, very practical information. So without delay, you should register. Go to orsba.org. Register, and we'll see you virtually in Oregon. Okay, without further ado, let's now go to Southern Alberta and Lethbridge to learn how to get colonies ready for winter with Dr. Shelley Hoover today on pollination. Hi, Shelley, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to see you here in Canada.
And we're in Lethbridge in your bee yard, and you were just as we were walking into the bee yard, you said you're putting in the winter 95 colonies.
That's right. We have 2 bee yards. One of them is a little crowded. This one that we're at right now has 40 colonies, and the other one's a little bit bigger, and we're just getting them ready to put them into winter.
It's a beautiful. So yeah, tell us what you're doing here. I'm looking at the yard, and you've got colonies with various sizes here.
So what you see here is 2 things. One is that we still have most of our feeders on. We feed sucrose syrup to our honeybees. We're actually really lucky because we're near a sugar factory, so we have a ready supply of. It's actually beet sourced sugar. And so we feed each colony, we try and put in our doubles about 21 liters before fall. We try and feed heavily so that we don't have to worry about it in the spring. For 2 reasons. First is that then we don't have to worry if the winter is long and we can't get to our bees. But also, the less you feed in the spring, the lower the chances your honey will be adulterated with syrup. So we try and feed heavily in the fall, and then only a little or not at all in the spring.
For listeners, because I recently was at the where was I? I was at the Lane County Beekeeping Club, and I asked the beekeepers there how much syrup do they feed, and what you indicated, which is about 4 gallons. No.
Yeah, about 4 gallons.
4 gallons.
5 gallons. Sorry,
5 gallons is really. I think that was the highest level, and I think it was one person. Most people fed a gallon. So this idea of getting enough syrup into the colony now and not having to deal with it during the winter or in the spring, really getting the syrup in now.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 thoughts on that. One is that, I'm imagining our winter is a little bit longer than the winter in Oregon.
Yeah.
But the second thing is if you look at the data, even from Canada, where beekeepers do feed pretty heavily, starvation is a common cause of death of honeybee colonies. So we prefer to feed heavily and invest in the syrup rather than losing colonies.
Well, it was. I do remember. There's the Dewey Karen does a survey of causes of death for urban beekeepers or beginner beekeepers, and death from starvation is the number one cause.
It's a huge one,
yeah.
And sometimes it's not the beekeeper's fault. Sometimes the bees just don't get on the food. But yeah, we try and feed 5 gallons for a double.
Okay, so that's the one thing you're doing here. You've got, and these are big feeders. Like they almost look to get that much syrup in. You're not using a division board feeder. You're going to the big guns.
No, we're going to the big they're hive top feeders. There's 2 reservoirs, one on each side, and then a float in each one, and they can really take down a lot of syrup pretty quickly. So we're doing that, we're feeding, but you can see that you mentioned the newspaper, we've also combined a lot of colonies. Anything that's weak or queenless gets combined. We want really 2 boxes full of bees for each colony going into winter.
Okay, so like if you had I'm imagining you might have had a colony at this time of year, it's in one box covering 4 or 5 frames, there you're going to combine it. You're not going to...
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great.
We like to combine in the winter and go into winter with strong things. Rather than having high losses in the spring. We'd rather just combine them, take them in the fall, and give them a chance to survive.
You know, the other thing I'm noticing here is just how many bees there are, and I guess coming back to that question about feeding is like you do have the population to take the feed and put it in the comb. Sometimes in the spring you're down to not that many bees, and it's hard to get feed into them, and it's cold out.
And it's cold, exactly. It's easier to feed in the fall. You have bigger populations, and then if you feed heavily in the fall, you don't have to worry about it in the spring.
Okay, well that's good. And the other thing I noticed is you have entrance reducers on the fronts of the colonies. Tell us a little bit about that. Why do you do that?
So we have big populations in the summer, and we usually take the entrance reducers on in the middle of the summer. But this time of year, wasps are a real problem, especially this year. So we try and reduce the entrance down to something the bees can, conceivably easily defend against the wasps. Even so, we do see a lot of wasps up in the feeder, but hopefully at least they're not killing the bees themselves.
Okay, and I'm for those of, if you're a gardener or something, you don't know anything about beekeeping, usually at the bottom there's a big gap where the bees fly in, and here now you've restricted it. There's maybe 3 small notches.
Yeah, maybe 3 centimeters width total.
Okay, all right, so that's what's going on here. And the other thing I notice, we are in Lethbridge, and you have bricks on every lid.
Yeah, so we have to put bricks on our lids because it is really windy here, and the lids will actually just blow right off. The other thing that you probably can't see because all the telescoping lids are on is that we use what they call here a decky, which is, it's an inner cover that's not wooden, it's made of burlap or canvas. And the one advantage to those is that when they blow off and they go tumbling around your bee yard and they hit you in the head, it doesn't hurt nearly as much as an inner cover.
It is funny, but for Oregon listeners, when you visit Alberta, after all of this is done, you'll come out through the Crow's Nest Pass, and it's the only place I've ever seen a sign that says your car might tip over because of the wind.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of things I've learned since I moved here about, living with wind. One of them is you never drive on the highway beside a potato chip truck because they're the most likely to tip over. Even when they're loaded, they're not heavy enough.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So you're going to be getting feed into these colonies now, and I guess how long have you been feeding for? Right now, it's the beginning of October.
Yeah, we started about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
It's been a little bit delayed because we had to wait for an order of sugar syrup, so we would have normally probably been done by now. And what we have left to do, you can see there's some gaps. We have pallets, and normally they're full pallets of 4 colonies each, and there's some gaps. So when it gets colder, we'll condense them down so that all the pallets each have 4 colonies.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap them up with an insulated tarp type wrap.
Hold it there. Let's just before we get to that. So you would feed, and you get all this feed into these colonies. This 5 gallons of syrup, which is thick syrup too. It's not the thin syrup. Yeah. 2 to 1. So you get all this syrup into these colonies, and then about this time of year, you take the feeders off, and then you say you're going to put the colonies into so that you can push 4 together.
That's right. So we take the feeders off, and we push them so that they're 4 to a pallet, and they're right snug up against each other, and that helps them maintain warmth, because if they're in a bigger group, they're not losing heat from all sides, just from the sides that are exposed, so two sides.
Okay.
So we push them together, and then we cover them with an insulated wrap, which then we tie down to the pellet so it doesn't blow off.
Okay, describe this thing, because I think where people don't quite have in Oregon, where you don't need this in Oregon.
Yeah.
But people don't quite have a picture of what this is. This is like a big quilt.
Yeah, imagine a thick quilt made out of tarp material. So it's like a sandwich of insulated layer, a flexible insulated layer with black tarp on either side, so that helps it absorb some heat from the sun. And then there's an entrance that's basically half a PVC pipe that goes in, and under the decky our inner cover, so that the bees can still come and go. And then the bottom entrance is also open, so the bees can still come and go. We sometimes get what's called a Chinook wind. It's a warm wind, and so our bees can often fly in February or March when we get this warm weather. And then having two entrances allows them both to come and go and take a cleansing flight, but also helps keep them dry.
It's funny because in Oregon I've noticed that another thing that people don't do is have upper entrances, and here this is one of the driest places I've ever lived. My lips crack in the winter.
Yeah.
But yet you're still moisture venting is really important. Describe what's going on.
Yeah, moisture venting is super important, and the way I kind of imagine it is, imagine your overwintering bee as a kitten. Kittens hate being wet. Kittens that are wet do not do well. They get cold.
They're awful.
So imagine your bees are kittens. Keep them dry, please. Keep your bees dry. Give them an upper entrance so that some of the moisture can get out.
Okay, so you're going to wrap these together. You've got your little, I can imagine it looks like this little black marshmallow or licorice. It's got like, with little holes sticking out of it for the, what goes on top?
So we don't put anything on top of that. A lot of beekeepers, especially northern Alberta where there's more snow, will put a sheet of plywood, like 1/4-inch plywood on top.
Oh, right, yours are like onesies.
Yeah. Yeah, we just have the quilt layer, but a lot of beekeepers will then put plywood on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you tie that all down, and then how long are they going to be in winter for?
So we try and wrap by Canadian Thanksgiving, which is this year October 12th. So we'll wrap before then, and we won't unwrap till at least April, maybe May. Depends on the weather.
Okay, that's a
It's
long
hard to say. This year we actually had like several feet of snow and a blizzard. Here it's like really warm t-shirt weather, so you never know what the weather's going to be like, and you really got to pay attention to the forecast, and don't plan by day, but plan by what the environment is actually doing.
Oh, that's a good point, because right now it's a beautiful day here, but it could change, and so the trick is to get your winter preparations done.
Get them done.
Get it done, because it takes a long time for that syrup to go in and then also to mature.
And it's one thing for us, we only have 2 bee yards, so if we have to, we can wrap them easily in an afternoon. But if you have, 40 bee yards, you're a big commercial beekeeper, it takes days and days and days to wrap all your bees. So you can't wait until the weather's going to turn, because then it's too late and they're not wrapped.
Okay, the last thing I want to ask you about is I do remember people, you do most of your mite management in August, but some people will use oxalic acid because these colonies are nice and tight, they're wrapped together. Is that something that you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something I wanted to point out, was we've already tested all of our colonies for varroa levels, and they were below the threshold. We actually only found like a few mites in each
congratulations.
yard. So we were really pleased with that, and that was having used Apivar in the spring. So we didn't treat with anything this fall, but probably we will go around and hit them later when they're broodless. And that might be November, might be December. We have the advantage, because of our harsh winters, of having a real solid break and brood cycle.
Right.
So, they will brood up when they're wrapped, and they will brood up in an indoor wintering facility, but by and large, they're pretty broodless come, November, December, and so we can hit them with an oxalic acid vaporization, and you can do that when they're wrapped. So that works really, really well. The only disadvantage to that is that you don't want to do it, you don't want to rely on that if you've had high mite levels, because your winter bees will have already been compromised by the varroa. So I only like to rely on oxalic acid sublimation if my bees are healthy going into the autumn.
That makes sense, because you did a lot of your mite control in August, and so those bees...
We did our mite control in the spring.
In the spring,
yeah.
Okay. Oh, really? And that carries you through?
We haven't done anything since then.
I love Alberta. Okay, so but you did know that you were going in low, and that way those bees have got to carry you through. The bees that are born in August and September are going to be the ones that are going to be in April.
All the way, exactly, all the way over winter. So you really need to make sure you have healthy bees going into the autumn.
Okay, so that's so with the oxalic acid, I noticed. What do you use? How do you administer your oxalic acid here in southern Alberta?
There's a number of different vaporizers you can use. I prefer the vaporization method because you can do it without opening the colony. You can do it when they're wrapped.
Oh, because they're all kind of tight. You don't want to go unwrap them.
I don't want to unwrap them at that time of year, and that's when they're broodless, and that's when oxalic acid is effective, when they're broodless. So we go in and do a vaporizer, and there's a number of different tools, Varroa vaporization devices that you can use.
How long does it take to treat this whole yard?
It's probably like 2 minutes per pallet or something.
So we're looking at about 40 colonies here. And 2 minutes
half an hour.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it's fast and it's cheap.
And before we take a break, how do other Alberta beekeepers, how do the colonies look going into winter? Have you heard much?
I've heard relatively good things. We had a really hard year last year. The one thing I have heard beekeepers struggling with this year is European foul brood quite a bit. There are also pockets where people seem to have trouble getting their Varroa down. So different things in different operations. Mm-hmm. By and large, I'd say overall not too bad going into winter.
Good. Well, let's hope it's a good winter here in southern Alberta, and everybody comes out with lots of beautiful, bountiful bees.
And the honey prices are high.
Let's hope for that too. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I just want to. You're going to be at the Oregon State Beekeepers Association meeting, so maybe we'll just get a little update on what you plan to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
We are back. So OSBA this year is going to be online. The Oregon State Beekeepers Association meeting is going to be online, but we have, I think, well, including me, there's going to be 3 Canadians at the Oregon State. Yoo-hoo! So what are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the meeting. I'm sorry that I can't come to Oregon in person, but I'm going to be talking about some of the work we've been doing on trapping pollen, but also queen breeding. So for queen breeding, what we've been doing is working with the Alberta beekeepers in southern Alberta, where we pollinate hybrid seed canola. So that's the crop that is used to grow canola across millions of acres in Canada and the U.S. So it's really a specialty cross where there's hybrids, and bees are very much necessary for that. And it's the only canola crop that beekeepers get paid to pollinate in Canada. So we've been working with the beekeepers that pollinate this crop to actually rear their own queens and mate them while their colonies are in canola pollination. And it's the perfect time for queens to be mating because the weather is really good. It's hot, it's sunny, it's not windy. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of big, strong doubles in the area. So there's tons and tons of drones for the queens to mate with. Weather is good. So it's really, you can't do any selection in terms of queen breeding, but it's a really good place and environment for production of queens.
Now, that's maybe for some of our listeners who do pollination, this seems like a weird thing. It's like pollination. I bring the colonies in, I manage them for swarming, but I really don't touch them. This idea is a little bit different. Is that as you go through and you the colonies are growing and that you service them, at that moment you're going to be making queens. Tell us a little bit about that procedure.
Yeah, we're lucky because canola is a really good crop for bees. So if you have to provide pollination services and that's part of your operation and how you make your income, it's a good crop to get paid to go to because your bees do grow, and it's midsummer. We're usually pollinating basically the month of July. And so it's a time when your colonies are doing well, they're strong, they're growing, there's lots of drones. So it really works. If you had a crop that was much earlier in the season, really early spring, it wouldn't work so well. Mm-hmm. But it does work, and in fact, we've had some beekeepers actually take their splits out of the colonies they're pollinating. Some beekeepers will hold some in reserve and split those and bring them to pollination. Some will just pull out a frame here, a frame there, wherever the colonies are strong enough to do that, and then put a queen cell in those colonies.
Okay, and then when those queens emerge, there's going to be a billion drones.
Those queens emerge. There's a billion drones for them to mate with, and we've had really, really good overwintering success with those nukes. So they'll overwinter them usually as a single, a sort of fairly strong single, because that single is going to grow in canola pollination. So they overwinter them as a single, usually indoors, and then we've had really good overwintering success with those new units, with those new strong young queens.
I do remember Dennis McKenna, who taught me everything, one of the many people who taught me everything about beekeeping, pointing out that a new queen in a colony in the summer can really pick up, and there's just the population's really young. It's a very vibrant colony.
Yeah, they grow really, really fast, and you can actually get a honey crop off them depending when you do a small honey crop, but depends how big you want to make it to start with.
Okay, so these colonies are that you make them, but doesn't the grower worry? It's like you've taken because I imagine when you make these, you have to move them to another yard, or else they'd fly home.
Right.
Isn't the grower like, well, you took away a box of bees? I'm upset. I paid for those.
Yeah. So the beekeepers are careful not to get their colonies below sort of the minimum standard, and so for canola pollination, it's basically 2 strong boxes of bees to start with to go into pollination. So these are big colonies that are pollinating canola. And often what they'll do is they'll just move them between the yards. So you're not actually overall removing bees. You're just putting them in. You're shuffling them around.
Oh.
Exactly.
And so the great thing is that you'd come out of canola with good, strong colonies, but you've probably made up the replacements instead of having to buy packages or something like that. You've got these good...
You've made up your replacements.
That's really great
already.
Idea.
So if you know on average, say you lose 15 or 20% of your bees, you can just make up that many new units in the summertime.
All right, great. I think this is going to have a lot of appeal to some of our beekeepers in Oregon who are really busy doing a lot of pollination. So the second thing you're going to talk about, and I'm excited about this, is pollen trapping, because you've been doing a lot of pollen trapping for years now.
Yeah, so this was also working with beekeepers who pollinate canola. We thought, well, you get paid for your honey, you get paid for your pollination services, but are there ways that it makes sense to sort of diversify the operation? So what we wanted to know was, is pollen trapping a viable hive product to make in this situation? You have to remember that these fields are managed for pollen production, because we have male and female bays or rows of plants, and so they're carefully managed so that there's always tons of pollen available to fertilize the female flowers. So there's a system where there's an abundance of pollen. So we thought, well, maybe the beekeepers can use that to their advantage. So we worked with beekeepers, commercial beekeepers, and we looked at, how much pollen can you get? Does it impact the colony health? How much, what's the loss, the hit to honey production, and is it economical to add pollen as a hive product?
This reminds me of an old study, Don Nelson, and I remember Jean Bergeron up in
Beaver Lodge.
They did sort of similar, because I remember there is their findings were something along the lines that there is a little bit of a hit, but that value of that pollen was, it really came out on top. How did it work out for you? The principle was that you're taking pollen away, but it has this value, and that even if there's a little bit of a reduction in honey production, that maybe it will come out on top.
Are you asking me to give the Oregon beekeepers spoilers?
Yeah, so what's the spoiler?
You have to wait and come to the meeting.
Okay, sorry guys and gals. So next, you're going to have to come. But this is the idea. The principle is that if you were able to pollen, because I know I've heard people talk about this, is like people are very nervous about pollen trapping. They think, I can only pollen trap for 24 hours or the colony's going to go downhill.
Exactly. So we wanted to know, in this system, and it's going to depend where you are, when you are, in this system, did it have a detrimental effect on the health of the colonies? Did it make economic sense? And what's the big picture for beekeepers, of what do they need to keep in mind if they're considering pollen trapping?
Dun, dun, dun. All right. Well, we'll have the links to the OSBA meeting, how you can register, on the show notes. And I'm really glad. I'll be in Oregon for OSBA. I'm going to be heading back right after this interview. Well, in a little bit after this interview. In a week. So, but thanks so much for taking time. I'm glad to see these big, beautiful colonies. Seriously, folks, there are just like the flight at the entrance.
You take a picture.
Yeah.
Post it instead of my face. nice.
That's what we'll do. We'll take a picture of this beautiful bee yard and we'll post it. But thanks so much, Shelley, for telling us a little bit about what's going on in Southern Alberta.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening. The show is produced by Quinn, Sin, and Neil, who's a student here at OSU in the New Media Communications program, and the show wouldn't even be possible without the support of the Oregon Legislature, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, and Western SARE. Show notes with links mentioned on each episode are available on the website, which is at pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's several ways to connect with me. The first one is you can visit the website and leave an episode-specific comment. You can suggest a future guest or topic, or ask a question that could be featured in a future episode. But you can do the same things on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by visiting the Oregon Bee Project. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.